Hello everyone. Today I wanted to make a video about some concept art that I've been coming up with for my own Destiny project. It is known as Project Heresy. It is based off episode Heresy, but what if it was like a full DLC expansion? The whole concept is it taking place after episode Heresy, except instead of Oryx dying at the end of the episode, he would still live. So this is basically the whole DLC is about exploring Six and the Outer Nine, the Lord of Every Nothing, the new Taken God, which is the Lord of Every Nothing, and Oryx and his homeworld of Fundament, along with the other two Hive siblings. So without further ado, let's get into the concept art. Okay, so to start, I had this quick warm-up piece of drawing the Dreadnought glowing again in the Rings of Saturn. Basically this is like the part or like a key shot you would see in a cutscene of the Dreadnought teleporting out of Saturn's rings. That's about it for this one. Low-key, I really enjoyed this one. This was really fun to do. Quick mood piece. Okay. This one is the Dreadnought arriving at Fundament. As you could probably tell, Fundament doesn't look like you would expect. It's obviously a big gas giant, but it has huge taken tendrils coming out of the planet's atmosphere and surface. It has more moons than it used to, which they're just giant eyeballs that the Lord of Every Nothing uses to control the planet. I think it'd be interesting, like, if he started there, or they started there, and then they, branched outward towards Sol. So, yeah. Alright. This piece I really enjoyed. This one is the most recent one I finished. It is of the Dire Taken themselves. If you don't remember, the Dire Taken are the new Taken that the Lord of Every Nothing controls, as far as we know. And I had a lot of fun, especially with the character in the middle. I'd imagine that that's one of the many appearances that the Lord of Every Nothing would have. Some kind of Hive wizard or knight. And it looks similar to Oryx, or has Oryx-like features, except not really. Because Oryx's Echo can only control the shades of Oryx, not the Lord of Every Nothing. But the Lord of Every Nothing controls basically every other Taken under the sun, because throughout the DLC, he would start losing control of the Dire Taken, and it's basically trying to discover what the hell is going on. I really enjoyed this piece, like I keep saying, and the lighting was really fun to do. Man, the lighting is just, and the Taken effects are always fun to do. So yeah. For this next one, I remember seeing some concept art on Bungie forums or online on Reddit. I don't use Reddit, thankfully. Of some Taken Dread, which I thought was rather interesting, seeing as the Dread and Dire Taken were teaming up, but then they were slowly breaking apart. So it's really interesting to me that the Lord of Every Nothing might not have complete control over the Dread. So they just took some of them that were resisting. As you can also see here, I did use a bit of photo bashing with some Adobe stock photos that I acquired. So I use those mainly for the tentacles. Everything else I drew. But it was really fun using photo bashing techniques. If you've never tried it, I highly recommend doing it. Also, if you couldn't tell, the subjugator is holding a tablet of ruin, which I think would be an interesting concept of going throughout the Fundament system and finding all the tablets and collecting them to help Oryx. Okay, now for the last one of the speed paints. I always liked the concept of Hive Guardians, but I would find it interesting if there were like more experimental ones, like ghosts that were like, you know what, it'd be really funny if I resurrected a ogre and it was a Thunder Crash Titan. So that's what this piece is. Later on I'll show the reference images that I made for this character. But this was, I forgot the name of the character, but it was one of a very minor boss. It was an unborn ogre on the moon during, I believe during D1 actually, that I turned into this. I obviously drew over and all. I obviously didn't trace or anything like that. But I find it funny that if this guy you fought this guy, his white mechanic would just be thunder crashing into you, and you'd all die. But I don't imagine he's like a hostile. I imagine he's someone like Luzaku or something like that, the one high wizard that's really chill. So like, but you would fight him. He's like, you beat him. His ghost gets away. He revives it. The ghost revives him, and then he helps you throughout Fundament randomly. He wouldn't be like a talkable NPC or like an NPC you can talk to, but he's mainly just like a guy who's there for the fun of the game and helping you and thunder crashing into Dire Taken and Dread. As for the background, I made it the Dreadnought, like they're outside of the Dreadnought, and there's Dire Taken surrounding them. Alright, here's some of the concept art for the ogre that was just shown, and a character that I have not drawn yet. During Heresy, we did encounter some, like, giant hive knights that were taken, and they had, like, stasis, hive boomers, which are, like, one of their main weapons. But I would find it interesting. We've seen a void one, we've seen a stasis one as the primary weapons for the Dire, so I thought it'd be interesting if this one was solar instead. Obviously, it's based off the War Priest from, King's Fall raid, but I wouldn't think that it is that same Ascendant Hive. I'd imagine it's a collective of war priests, either formerly from Sabathun's brood or Shiva or Rafts. So, other than that, that's it for this sheet. This sheet was very fun, and I had enjoyed drawing both these characters. Alright, here's a fun one. I know the Scorn are pretty much all mindless, except for maybe the Barons. And during Revenant, if I'm not mistaken, when I played through the Kel's Fall mission, when you kill Fikrul for the final time, he has all his Barons there. I'm not sure if the Barons are technically alive in canon, but I would like to imagine Hyrax is one of the only ones that was successfully resurrected and can stay alive. After all, he is technically an Ascendant Hive / Elixini / Scorn. It's very, very interesting. I like his character concept. I was talking to some like other people on like Discord that are fellow Destiny fans, and they thought it'd be really interesting if he like in this game, or like not game, but like in this concept, he willingly sacrificed himself to be taken because he would be like all for it since he's a hive, and he would see it as like the way to like become sharper. But as for this concept art, I just took a screenshot that I found online of Hyrax the Mindbender from episode Revenant from the Kel's Fall mission, and I just cut it out, turned it black and white, then added some blues and turquoises and a little bit of green in there, and then I made 4 different designs, one that's basically the same thing, and then adding more and more to it. I ended up in the next piece you're gonna see that I sadly don't have a speed paint for, since I used 2 different platforms for it. I'll show it off now. Alright, here we go. Final piece. So for this artwork, I wanted to show off, like, Hyrax, obviously. But I didn't do any photo bashing, I believe, for this one. This is one of the illustrations that I started in Krita using these oil painting brushes that were really good. Most of it was free. There's a paid version, and the paid version is definitely worth it, but if you don't want, I mean, it's only like $1, so like, I'll see if I can find it again and link it. If I don't, then see, or like if you don't see it in the bottom, that's probably why I couldn't find it. But I started it with that in Krita, and then I moved it over to Procreate where I rendered it and like added more features and that kind of stuff and glowing effects. I like using Krita to start out my pieces and then move it to Procreate for textures and rendering, which is really funny because I know people do the opposite. They usually start in Procreate and then move to Photoshop or Clip Studio, or in this case Krita, to finish their products. Or not products, but they can be products, artworks. To finish their art. So, yeah, but I really did enjoy making this piece, and I think Procreate is really underrated for finishing stuff. Sure, it might not be like the highest quality that people tend to like, but for me it works. So, and plus, I like all the texture brushes in Procreate. I'll definitely have to show off what texture brushes I use. It's like the only thing I really use in that app. Anyways, I'll show off the still images of all the other pieces and give you more in-depth breakdown. There's not really much to break down for this one, though. It was kind of the piece that started it all, the Saturn one that I showed off at the start. So, from here on out, I'm just going to have some music playing, and just feel free to kick back and look at the art. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Until next time.